Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire gave a speech over the weekend where he said that no matter how much surgery is involved, men cannot be women and women cannot be men. And so now the liberal media is accusing him of, I guess, being literally Hitler? I'm Sheila Gunn Reid, and you're watching The Gun Show.
The problem with transgenderism is not that it is inappropriate for children under the age of 9. The problem with transgenderism is that it is not true. The problem with transgenderism is that it puts forward a delusional vision of human nature that denies the reality and importance of sexual difference and complementarity. The problem with transgenderism is that its acceptance at any level necessarily entails the complete destruction of women's bathrooms, women's sports, all of the specific rights and spaces that women currently have for themselves. There can be no middle way in dealing with transgenderism. It's all or nothing. If transgenderism is true, if men really can become women, then it is true for everybody of all ages. If transgenderism is false, as it is, if men and women really are different, as we are, then it is false for everybody too. And if it is false, then we should not indulge it, especially since that indulgence requires taking away the rights and customs of so many people. If it is false, then for the good of society, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology at every level. Have I made myself clear?
That is Michael Knowles from his Monday Daily Wire show, reading verbatim from the speech he gave at CPAC over the weekend. He calls for compassion for the transgender community, but he also calls for a return to objective reality. Now, you might disagree with Knowles' viewpoint, or maybe you do agree with his viewpoint, but you don't quite like how he said it, or maybe the fact that he said it out loud. But you cannot, in good conscience, say that he said anything genocidal in there. But that didn't stop Rolling Stone, Huffington Post, and Yahoo for saying that he called for genocide, that he called for the murder of people who identify as transgender. I mean, it's insane to publish a headline like that. But they let their articles and their malicious headlines stand until Knowles threatened them with libel. You see, these companies have zero self-awareness whatsoever. They missed the irony of them critiquing Knowles' desire to return to the truth by lying about him. They lied about him while he was saying, you know what we need to do, guys? Go back to the truth. And these media companies were so brazen in their lying that they lied about something that was captured on video for the world to see so that the world could fact check the lies in real time. Now, one of the few people who actually got the story right the first time around and reported on what Knowles said accurately was my friend Kennedy Hall from LifeSite. He's not been on my show before, but I've been on his. And while I'm annoyed at the lies of the mainstream media, it's a really good opportunity to invite Kennedy onto my show to discuss the mainstream media's absolute apoplexy about somebody who might disagree with them on the issue of transgenderism. We're also discussing the treatment of a Christian pastor in Calgary, Derek Reimer. To learn more about his story, go to savepastorderek.com. At that website, you can make a donation to offset his legal fees. Reimer was just released from jail after the city of Calgary criminalized disagreeing with drag queens who read books to small children at the local municipal library. Is there some sort of correlation between men in cross-sex burlesque costumes and childhood literacy rates that I am just missing somewhere? Can anybody help me with that? Anyway, here's my interview with Kennedy. Take a listen. This free episode of The Gun Show is brought to you by...
Adam So's here for Rebel News. You know, our company is growing quickly, and we'd actually like for your company to grow too. That's why this ad space that I'm speaking through right now is actually available for you to purchase. So instead of people listening to me, they could actually be learning about your company, learning about your business. If this interests you, if this is an opportunity you'd like to capitalize on, send us an email at ads@rebelnews.com.
So joining me now is somebody new to, I think, viewers of my show. But if you follow my Twitter account, you know that I quite frequently interact with him. It's Kennedy Hall from LifeSite, but he's also an author, and we'll get to that at the end of the show. Thanks for agreeing to this interview, Kennedy.
Well, thanks, Sheila. Back when I had a radio show, you came on as a guest a few times, so it was my pleasure to return the favor.
That's great. Thank you so much. Now, you write a lot about things happening in the culture wars. Because I think that's really the battleground for humanity. And one of the things that I found really fascinating over the last couple of days, and I'll get you to give us the backstory. You'll do a better job than I will. But Michael Knowles of the Daily Wire was speaking at CPAC, and he gave a very reasonable speech. And he was accused very quickly of genocide, literally genocide, by the mainstream media. You were one of the few people on the entire planet who got the story right the first time around. So I'll shut up. You tell us exactly what happened.
Sure. So at the what's the CPAC stand for? Conservative Political Action Coalition, I think. At the CPAC conference down in Washington area, Michael Knowles gave one of the speeches on Saturday. And actually, I had to report on the thing all day. I was working a Saturday, and I watched a bunch of speeches. And I have to say, his was the best. It was far and away the best. Just very well scripted, very articulate, very packed a lot of punch. Anyway, his speech was essentially conservatives. Okay. You can't keep shaking hands with the sexual revolution and think you can remain conservative. So he started off the speech talking about, he said it's like conservatives are always defending something that liberals were defending 10 years ago. And he said, so in the 1970s, it was like, those bra burning feminists saying they don't need a man are crazy. And then a few years later, well, that's fine. But they'll tell you that sexual revolution stuff, no, that's crazy. And then a few years later, he said, well, that sexual revolution stuff, that's okay. But that redefinition of marriage stuff, no, that's crazy. And then a few years later, it was, well, that's fine. But this transgenderism stuff, no, that's crazy. And he says now it's, well, transing kids in grade 3 is bad, but grade 4 is fine, And this is just something, sadly, we see with conservative leaders. I mean, especially ours in Canada, And he said, the thing is about the transgender issue is it's really just a matter of reality. I get, you and I are both Catholics, and okay, we believe traditional Catholic beliefs on sexuality, but I understand the logic of how, somebody can still be a very traditionally minded person, but maybe disagree on certain aspects of how one ought to live in their personal life. I get that. Mm-hmm. But the trans thing, it's medical. Like, it's just, you just, you are a guy or you're not. It's not very complicated. It's not an ideology. It shouldn't be. It's like you have two legs and 2 arms. You have certain genitalia. You don't. I mean, these are very basic things. And he said, this is the sort of battleground where conservatives have to stand firm. And he said, of all the things conservatives cave on, the one thing in America they didn't cave on was life, and they won. And he says, so stop caving on everything. And then he finally said, and this is the line that was the title of our article, because I knew it was going to be the one that would get the clicks. But he said, transgenderism must be eradicated from public life. Now, clearly, if you watch the speech, he did not say any persons had to be eradicated. He was talking about the philosophy of transgenderism. This idea that you can deny reality, and that you can encourage children to do things that harm themselves in a perpetual way by having surgeries and so forth. He said, this is insane. Everyone agrees that it's insane and it just has to stop. And that's what he was referring to.
And yet the likes of Rolling Stone, I think if you search for the Rolling Stone article, you'll get their old headline first. But if you click through, it's the we just got threatened with a lawsuit headline that actually pops up. And they wrote it up saying CPAC speaker calls for transgender people to be eradicated. Now you can listen to his speech. It's on YouTube. He read from his speech on, I think it was Tuesday's Michael Knowles show. He just read his speech and he said, I choose my words very carefully. I didn't say that. And he, for once, it's nice to see, although maybe it's a little more difficult in the United States to threaten people with libel lawsuits.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because the bar is so high there. I think, First Amendment country, I get it. But he threatened them with a lawsuit. And that's refreshing to see because it follows the theme of his speech.
Yes.
Fight back for truth in all aspects of your life, which he did. He saw these hit pieces roll in and he said, you know what? You better fix that because this is libel. And they very quickly did. But he was written up as some sort of genocidal maniac, like the Pol Pot of the American conservative Christian right. But that's not at all what he said.
No, it's not. I can relate. I released a book about masculinity back in 2020. And I say in it, effeminacy, which means being an unvirtuous and soft man, that's what it means, must be eradicated. And people said, you called for the eradication of all gay men. And I was like, what? Anyway, so I've been through this. I was literally one of the critiques. The left, they don't have any arguments. They have to resort to your literally Hitler. They have nothing else. So, but it's interesting. Knowles talking about this idea in his speech. I don't know if you saw, he reported on his show about Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador. And there was a section of a press conference of his that kind of went viral. And he talked about why he was throwing all of the criminals in jail the way he was, which just seemed like they're in jail because they're criminals.
Right.
But he basically, El Salvador is one of the most corrupt, gang-ridden earth, those Mara Salvatruchas and all these sorts of gangs. And they basically run the country. And I can't believe he hasn't been Epsteined yet because he took a crusade against it. And but he used an analogy. He said, after the Nazis were in charge in Germany, the country of Germany cleansed Nazism from the country. And he says they were unrelenting. They literally they didn't dig up the graves, but if someone had a tombstone with a Nazi symbol on it, they took down the tombstone and put a new one up. If you spray a swastika on the train station or something, it's like you're in jail for like 5 years, like not even a chance of a defense. There's just, it might sound harsh, but the point is that there's just a certain disorder that's so it's such a disease in a culture that the state exists for a reason, and it's to ensure the common welfare and the public good. And this thing has to be eradicated. And he said, gang stuff is like that in our country. It's destroying the country. It's destroying families. It's destroying lives. We have to go nuclear on it. There is no other option. And I think Knowles was referring to that mentality of, again, people are going to choose to live the way they want in their personal life. What he's saying is all shadows of this must be removed from public life because it's actually bad for the human race as a whole.
Yeah, I don't, I try not to turn the show into Sheila's Catholic Catechism hour, but
Well, you shouldn't have invited me on then.
But at the same time, I lead with my chin. I always tell people, unlike the CBC, I want my bias to be clear to the viewer. And I think they're smart too. They can see right through it. So I think even people who are not like me, who don't see the world through a very specific worldview, they can believe in objective truth. And like you said, people can choose to live their lives however they see fit in their private lives or even in their lives. But it is objective truth that no matter the amount of medical procedures, man is a man and a woman is a woman. And however we alter the outward appearance. It doesn't change the biological reality of that individual. And to tell someone otherwise is unkind and cruel.
It's also like, you know, you and I were talking about this quickly before we came on the air. How did this happen so fast? Like, so I was a teacher. I was subsequently canceled. I haven't actually gone public with the story yet all the way, but I was reprimanded by the Ontario College of Teachers for my Catholic beliefs. I have it on recording. And I taught in a Catholic school anyway. But
Josh Alexandered you.
Well, it was like, well, it's like what Peterson's going through right now with the psychology board.
Yeah.
I was told my Catholic beliefs were abusive to students. That was literally what they said. Anyway, so, but I remember teaching this grade 12 class in 2015, 2016. And I loved this class. It was a great class. And it was a religion class. And there was that video that went viral. Remember that video, College Kids Say the Darndest Things? It was like one of the first videos about the transgender ideology. It was from the Family Policy Institute of Washington or something. Went around to college campuses, you know, okay, can I identify as a man? Sure. Okay, can I identify as a 6 or a 6? He was a guy. Can I identify as a woman? Sure. Can I identify as a 6'5" woman? Well, no, you can't really do that. Can I identify as a 6'5" Chinese woman? Well, that's too far. And he was trying to get at the point of, okay, by what standard? And I had this debate with my class. I showed my class. No wonder I got reprimanded. They loved it. They had a wonderful debate. And the sentiment in the class was not this crazy woke thing you would expect from a 17 or 18-year-old now. And this was only 8 years ago. But we watched it as educators filter into the school and be pushed down our throat. And you just realize, listen, kids are indoctrinated for better or for worse. You know, propaganda, to go back to our Catholicism, it literally means a propagation of belief. So propaganda is bad if what you're propagating is bad. Propaganda is good if what you're propagating is true. And the propaganda that's being thrown at these kids is just demonstrably evil. They are doing things to harm their bodies. I went to the March for Life last year. I saw David Menzies there in Ottawa. And these poor kids, it broke my heart. You know, these 16-year-old kids, and they've cut their breasts off and stuff, and they're not wearing shirts because they're a guy now. And they're just out there. And it's like, it's so tragic. And you don't get there. It just didn't exist the way it didn't exist 10 years ago. It's because it's being taught to the kids. And again, if a person grows up and they make a decision to do something that I think is wrong, this is called living in a society. It is what it is. But you don't get to teach things to children that harm them forever. And that's the problem.
Yeah, I had a friend who used to look at kids who suddenly caught this social contagion. And she would look at them and say, you know, we have to have compassion. These kids are future suicides if we don't do something. And really, that's what it is, because there will come a time where they will realize that they have been misled by everybody they trusted. So that just the extreme sense of betrayal and the realization of what they've done to their bodies. I don't know how you come back from that. And there's the whole other side. You have a daughter. I've got a daughter, a couple of daughters. This idea that men are women changes the world they live in for the worse. My daughter is an elite level rugby player. The day that she has to square off against a boy in the ruck is the last game she ever plays. After she's worked her whole life. And, you know, that's just my daughter. I mean, this sort of thing is robbing opportunity from hardworking girls all over the world. And the feminists are like this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, you don't have to be religious. It's just about the natural law.
Yeah.
You know, there are just, you know, if you say something's right or you say something's wrong, okay, you're appealing to a standard that just is there. You know, it's like the Constitution of the United States. You know, these truths are self-evident. There's just certain things that are self-evident. It is self-evident that men and women are different. It is self-evident that not only are they different physiologically, but they have certain predispositions that are feminine and certain predispositions that are masculine. They share a lot, but some of them are unique. And we can't eradicate these. We can't, ironically, Michael Knowles saying we have to eradicate this ideology from society. He's literally just saying the photo negative of what the leftists are saying, because they'll say things all the time. We have to destroy, we have to eradicate white privilege or whatever, right? Pick the thing. And it's like, that's insane, So I think Michael Knowles is correct. But if you're using the same methods, you can't be mad at the guy for using the same, for using the opposite. And you mentioned these kids that are abused, or these kids that are future suicides and stuff. This is a sad reality as well. And I taught in a high school with 1,000 kids, and I've taught elementary school. If I think of the dozen or so kids that were in the school that sort of got into the gender stuff, almost all of them were from disordered, broken, and abused homes. I actually think all the ones I'm thinking of, I can't think of one kid who came from, a quote unquote, white middle class home that was, everything was hunky dory, intact families. I'm sure there are. I'm just saying, I can't think of a single one. It was almost always kids who came from homes where there was a fatherhood problem, a drug problem, multiple dads sort of thing, extreme poverty. And there's got to be a predatory nature to how these people are going after these kids. What's with this great drag queen story hours? Like, can we just, I know you guys talk about it. We talk about it live site. This is nothing new to us, but my goodness. How do we get to the point where, I've got 5 children and we've got a library 100 meters from our house. And luckily we're in a small town. Nothing kind of woke has happened there yet. But how are we at the point?
Yeah.
That I'm like, my wife wants to take kids to the library. And I'm thinking, we need to double check if a naked man is going to dress up like a woman with a thong on and with rainbow sunglasses. What is going on?
Yeah.
It really is crazy, and it all comes from a place of the denial of reality, and of course it's predatory. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it to kids.
Well, that's the thing. You want to read a book to kids? Yeah, read a book to kids.
Yeah, put some clothes on.
What do I care? Why do you have to do it in sequined ladies' underpants? Like, why do you have to do it in a cross-sex burlesque costume? And
it's so weird.
One of the questions I get all the time is, Sheila, why are parents doing this? Why are they taking them there? And, for so many parents on the left, they don't see their child as, I see my kids as, I have these 3 opportunities to make the world a better place. So I have to do it right. I have to make sure that they are good, productive people who will, to use Jordan Peterson's language, bring order out of chaos, to do good in the world, not just be good or try to be good, but do good around them. And I think the left sort of sees their children as an accessory, like a button on their jean jacket that says like love wins. That's how they look at their children. And, again, I try to avoid turning the show into Sheila's Catechism Hour, but you know what? There were always parents willing to, for whatever reason, put their babies up on the altar of Moloch. And
yes,
well,
no, you're right.
It
you're
looks
right.
different ways in different times, but this is how it looks today.
It is. And also, I think a lot of parents, if you don't have strong values, even if you're whatever different denomination of religion, but if you don't have strong foundation in an absolute truth that you believe you are beholden to for the sake of the salvation of your soul, if that's not something that you're willing to stick by, then you're going to fall for things. And also too, we could have an analogy here with all the COVID stuff we went through. Why did so many people fall for this, for the narrative, for the scam, for whatever you want to call it? We can believe different things about the virus, but why do people fall for that thing, that whole paradigm? And it's because for the longest time, we've had this Marxist inspired school mechanism where we are told that from a young age that it's funny. They got rid of original sin and they called it white privilege. They got rid of it, like we're told that we have a problem that can only be fixed by the experts. And this is long before COVID. This is long before Drag Queen Story Hour. So you get to the point of, well, listen, like I talked to a family member who lives out in Vancouver, and he went all woke. And he's like, well, Kennedy, I got to recognize about myself that it's like 2020 and I've got to like embrace the way things are going because like I can't be a bigot. And I'm like, who said you were a bigot?
Yeah.
Well, the culture said you were a bigot. The mechanism said you're a bigot. You were told that your traditional values were psychologically disordered. And I think a lot of parents, they've imbibed this. And it's like, well, the public education system's good. The public library's good. The prime minister's good. They're telling me I should do this. So if I'm going to be good, I have to. I really think it's that simple.
Yeah. I think you have a wonderful point there. Now, not sticking with, but it seems as though a lot of good things are happening over at the Daily Wire lately. Matt Walsh, Catholic like us, he called out Christian leaders for their absolute silence, by and large, not exclusively, on the issue of drag queen story hours and transgenderism and pastors getting arrested. Tucker Carlson, same thing. Where are the professional Christians while pastors are getting arrested? And it came from my own church, when Tim Stevens is going to church going to jail for not turning away a congregant at the door, being unable to sign conditions that would force him to turn away congregants, or when James Coates is being incarcerated for 5 weeks for the very same thing. You could hear a pin drop throughout the Christian movement in this country with, again, very few exceptions. Why is that happening?
Oh, man. I mean, I guess from a religious perspective, almost nobody believes in hell anymore. I mean, I'm just being honest. Like the idea that you actually have to be like Christ and die that way, and like you can't just apostatize because the government told you to, that's anathema to so many people, even conservatives, even people who are morally conservative, because they've adopted this very postmodernist biblical scholars attitude of like, Christianity is about finding the best version of yourself. And this is our tradition. And yes, we're pro-life and pro-marriage because those things are better for you. It's very human-centered. Yeah. Whereas these pastors and these priests who were willing to do things underground or, however they chose to do it, but like to say, I'm going to serve my flock no matter what. They have a vertical mindset. They look up to God. They don't look horizontal to man, because they understand that we're ordered towards God. So that's just gone in a lot of people. We're suffering in the Catholic Church because of some of the leadership, and it's the same problem as what's happening in the Protestant denominations. And, these few men who stick their heads up, like Father Altman down in the States, or these canceled priests and stuff, they stick their head up and a bishop whacks it down. And then I guess from a very natural perspective, cities, or whether it's tax breaks, or whether it's grants, or whatever the thing is, they get financially compensated. They get sustained by government, either programs or funding. And here in Canada, I remember talking to the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms back in May of 2020. I found this is before they blew up, right? We got LifeSite, You Get Rebel. We've been trumpeting these guys the whole time because they've done such great work, but they were very small then. And I messaged them on Twitter and I said, "Why is it that my church has to be closed, even though we, in theory, have freedom of religion?" And he said, "The difference between us and the States is that property rights are constitutional in the States. Mm-hmm. In Canada, they're not. Common law works great if the people are sane." Yeah. So in the spirit of the law would not be to take somebody's church for holding Easter service. But he said the problem is technically it's not protected by the Constitution, so the government can just take your property. And if you have a license, which they have to because they have public kitchens and things like that, they're literally licensed by the government. It's not a private residence. And he said that's the issue. So I think from Canada, that's a very practical thing, is these pastors knew that they would just get their churches taken away.
And then, the ones that did, they continued to minister, and actually their churches are growing. I know Tim Stevens, he's looking for a bigger facility. Grace Life, they're looking for a bigger facility. I think Pastor Art's outgrown his facility. And it just is so disappointing, but also not, because, again, Sheila's Catechism, we're also told these things would happen. And
yes,
this is a church that is soaked in the blood of martyrs. And I'm looking at my church saying, why are you scared of Dina Hinshaw? And that happened universally.
Yeah. We just had a men's conference. My chapel put on a men's conference for it was the Canadian Martyrs Men's Conference, and the reason we chose the Martyrs is because, hey boys, you want to take back your country and have strong families and stuff. Look what those missionaries did who came over. They loved the natives. Yeah, that's why they were willing to go and get scurvy just to preach them the gospel. You don't do that for somebody you don't like. And they were our heroes. They shed their blood to spread, the gospel of Jesus Christ to Canada. And we need to recapture that. We need to recapture that spirit if we're going to beat this woke monster.
Well, I know I said 20 minutes. We're way over, but I still want to. Okay, perfect. Yeah, I don't have a meeting for another half an hour. So I also wanted to talk to you about how damaging the way the left talks is to the language. For example, going back to the Michael Knowles thing, the use of the word genocide or the use of the word Nazi. Yes. Nazi now just means anybody I disagree with or any prickly conservative who won't shut up when I scold them. That's what it means now. And the only people that actually helps are real Nazis, because you serve to normalize one of the worst evils that's ever walked the face of the earth. What I found, and I hate to use the word offensive because offensive usually means you can't control your emotions. But what I found so offensive about labeling Michael Knowles' speech genocide was that I've actually been to two places where a genocide actually took place. When I was in Poland for the climate change conference, my producer and I said, you know what, we're in Poland. When are we going to get this opportunity again? Let's jump on the train. Let's go out to Auschwitz. Let's see. Let's ground ourselves and give ourselves that context when we're talking about this, or when somebody on the left tries to shut us up by calling us Nazis. Let's go look and see how damaging that is to the language and reality. But also in 2019, I was in the Nineveh Plain, where the Christians there survived the ISIS genocide, and they've returned. Part of the reason I went there was because we were working with Mercury One, with the Nazarene Fund. And we went there to say to the Christians, look, you've survived a genocide. How do we get you somewhere else that you need to go? How do we get you from here? How do we resettle you? Mercury One works with churches. How do we help you, give you what you need? And they said, we don't want to go. We need electricity. We need services in our town. We need to go back. We need to go back to Batnaya. ISIS will not take our home on the Nineveh Plain. I saw where ISIS had defiled the church. They used the spire to as like a sniper's nest. They went to the graveyard and dug up the graves of the Christians, smashed the headstones, turned it to rubble. And it was funny. The local priest said, okay, well, I'm just going to take the rubble from the graveyard and turn it into paving stones in the new children's Sunday school that he was building. So even in that, he would not be defeated. But I've seen what an actual genocide looks like. You diminish the survivors of a genocide and how evil a genocide is by just saying, somebody disagreed with me, you genocided me. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's like little children having a tantrum. They don't have any
Yeah.
words left. So he scratched me.
I died.
My children do this all the time. Yeah. He tried to kill me. It's like, no, he didn't. Anyway, Daddy, he almost drowned me. It's like you're wrestling in the water and you lost. They didn't try to drown you, and this is what they do. It really is sad. Like, again, it doesn't even make sense grammatically. You can't genocide transgender because it's not like I don't even think that would count as genocide because it's not like some sort of identifiable like race of people. Like, what does it even mean? Like, does that mean, buddy who dressed up, but we used to say transvestite? I remember, again, this has gone so fast. I remember being at University of Ottawa and I worked in the Starbucks at the chapters there.
Oh, so you saw it all.
Yeah, but it wasn't that bad then. Like it was, I mean, there was a fella, he was a man, but he lived as a woman and he worked at the chapters and no one cared.
Right.
Because it was just like what he did. He was very kept to himself, very kind. And, but they called him a transvestite. That's what he was called then, And my point here is what does it even mean to be transgender? Like with all these things, how could you even say this is an identifiable group I'm going to genocide? So it doesn't even really fit the definition, besides the fact that it cheapens the definition. And it's just the boy who cried wolf. You teach this to your kids. If you keep lying, then when something bad actually happens, and no one's going to listen to you. So I can't understand the left's mentality. It must be so exhausting. I mean, to be so angry all the time. I can't imagine like thinking everybody's like a mass murderer. That'd be such a terrible way to live.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have fun? I don't know. It's so weird.
Well, yeah. Like, how do you have fun? How do you live your life when society is telling you that everybody who looks like you, Kennedy, is going to kill you, who wants to eradicate you from the face of the earth? No wonder they all have anxiety disorders on the left.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. How do you live? I mean, I work, I'm in a similar line of work at LifeSite News.
Mm-hmm.
There's some days I write some stories and man, it sucks. I'm like, oof, that was a real bad, I wrote a story. I wept at my desk. It was a story about this young man in Toronto who died from the jab, and it was confirmed by an autopsy. And it was really, really sad. His dad's on Twitter, answers for Sean. It's kind of went famous, this story. And I had to listen to the story, like, the public, like the town hall call he was calling into the meeting and stuff. And that was a really bad day for me, and so what I'm saying is I get it. Like you can be conservative liberal and there's reasons why there's bad news, but I can't imagine the leftist mentality of believing that people's immutable characteristics, their race, their gender, their ethnicity, like those things make the person bad. Yeah. I mean, really, they're very racist. But this gets thrown, but we need to understand they're very, very racist. The idea that white privileges can even be a term is insane. It's how on earth does a guy who lives in Slovenia in the 1990s, with the Balkan Wars, have privilege? This is ridiculous. How does my no, God rest his soul, comes over to Canada with my mom and her family in 1967, and he's 40 years old, has to restart his life because Italy's devastated after the wars and the communists are taking over after Mussolini. It's just no one good's in charge, and he's got to work 70 hours a week. I mean, his privilege was hard work.
Yeah,
you can't tell me that this guy had some sort of magical white power that got him. Like, he didn't. He just was like everyone else, and the fact that this is, we even think, how do we even get to the point where we can talk about genocide? Well, I guess it's the steps that got us there. I mean, again, we're so inundated with these terms like white privilege, but if you really break it down, it's so racist. Like, you are saying that a group of people have special powers because of their race. Can you imagine if you said that about anybody else? And they won't allow you to. Anyway, it just it really is fascinating. And this would go back to the transgender thing, because it's a denial of reality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the reason why the left can advocate for transgenderism is because they have decided that reality will not apply to them. You are racist because you say white privilege isn't a thing, even though white privilege itself is racist. Therefore, you are also a bigot because you don't think children should mutilate themselves, even though that's what we think they should do. It's like a disease.
Yeah, it's a mind virus. It really is.
Yeah.
Kennedy, how do people find your work and support your work? Tell them about your books.
Sure.
Tell everybody everything.
Sure. So I'm a journalist for LifeSite News. I think I tried to wear my company logo here to make my bosses happy. There you go. I love my company. It's a great place to work.
Yep.
Us, True North, you guys, that's about it.
Pretty
holding
much
down the fort here in Canada. And it's a pleasure to be in colleagues. So LifeSite News, I write there 2-3 articles a day, Monday to Friday. You can find me there. Some commentary, some straight news. I have a YouTube channel called The Kennedy Report. I do a bunch of very Catholic themed stuff there. You can also, I have 2 books. One is called Terror of Demons, Reclaiming Traditional Catholic Masculinity. And one is called Lockdown with the Devil. If you've ever read C.S. Lewis's Screwtape Letters, it is that style of book, and it follows a family through the lockdown and what the demons would do to their family. I think it's a good book. And then that's about it. That's all my stuff.
Oh, I didn't know about the second book. I'm very excited. I bought the first book for my friend who recently converted to Catholicism and starting his family and getting married. I'm like, this is the perfect book for you.
Cool.
And he really enjoyed it. So Kennedy, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm so sorry that this is the first time you've been on the show, but hopefully we will be able to repeat it very soon.
Anytime.
This free episode of The Gun Show is brought to you by my mug.
I know. It's pretty cool. So is this hoodie I got on, and you could have it on too if you check out our special website at rebelnewsstore.com. That's where you can see Freedom Focus hoodies that we have for you, beanies, cell phone cases, you name it, all while supporting our journalism, where we fight to bring you the other side of the story, as opposed to, being forced by the Trudeau government to fund leftist media out of your taxes. The truth is, without you and your generosity, there is no Rebel News. So again, if you like the reports that we bring you and that we also fight for freedoms in Canada, please consider doing some shopping, picking up some swag at rebelnewsstore.com. We appreciate your support.
We've come to the portion of the show where I invite your viewer feedback. Unlike the mainstream media, I actually care about what you think about the work that we're doing here at Rebel News. It's the reason I give out my email address right now. So if you want it, write it down. Although it's easy to remember, it's Sheila@rebelnews.com. Put Gun Show Letters in the subject line, so I know that you are sending me a letter directly related to the show, because I do get some days hundreds, no exaggeration, hundreds of emails a day. But also, don't hesitate to leave a question or comment wherever you might find the work that we do on Rumble or Odyssey or the censorship platform of YouTube, even on the Facebook page or on the website. Leave a question or comment there too. Sometimes I go looking over there. Now, today's letter actually landed in my email inbox. It comes to me from Wayne, and it's about a show I did a couple weeks ago with my friend K2, Kian Simone. He's our chief documentary filmmaker here. And if you're watching this on Wednesday night, then as you are watching this, I am currently in the middle of our last live screening of Kian's latest documentary, Trudeau on Trial. To get details, you can go to trudeauontrial.com. So even if you aren't able to make it to the in-person screenings, if you are a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, you get early access to any of his documentaries, and it is also available in episodes on our main YouTube channel. So there are a couple different ways that you can find the documentary, but I think the best way is in person with hundreds of friends you haven't met yet. Anyway, we were talking about what prompted Kian's documentary. It documents his time and all of our time to what we call the Trucker Commission, the Public Order Emergency inquiry into Justin Trudeau's use of the Emergencies Act on peaceful anti-regime protesters in the nation's capital. He used a wartime law, a counterterrorism law, on bouncy castles and hot tub parties and horn honking. I mean, it's just crazy. He apparently, according to the commissioner, Paul Rouleau, was justified because those aforementioned bouncy castles amounted to a national security crisis that the government needed extraordinary tools to deal with. And of course, the suspension of civil liberties, the arrests of leaders, the detainment of people without warrant, and the warrantless seizures of bank accounts. I mean, just insane. But anyway, Wayne writes to me, when you asked K2 last week what is next after the Emergency Commission inquiry, I thought he'd spill his guts, but no. Does no one at Rebel News believe that Justin Trudeau will not prorogue Parliament, or is that topic unmentionable on air? Well, I am currently mentioning it on air, so I don't know what you mean by that, but it's just not something that I think Justin Trudeau will do. Now, for those of you who don't know, proroguing Parliament is basically stopping and suspending Parliament. And it sounds extraordinary, but really it's not. It happens quite frequently, actually. In fact, it famously happened when the Liberals, the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP tried to form a coalition to stop Stephen Harper from forming a minority government. And so Harper prorogued Parliament, and he subverted their plan to take over Parliament. And so it happens from time to time. But I don't think Justin Trudeau will do that, because he doesn't need to do that, because the NDP are propping him up no matter what. They wouldn't say that even if Justin Trudeau was found unjustified in using the Emergencies Act, that they would break their coalition with him. So why would he prorogue Parliament? He doesn't need to do anything to hang on to power, because the NDP are mindless and irrelevant and have given over all their power to the Liberals. As long as the Liberals give them just a little bit of what they need, they'll give the Liberals everything they need to hold on to power. It's quite pathetic, actually. Anyway, let's keep going. Has no one there read the Marxist Handbook? Okay, I don't know what you mean by the Marxist Handbook. So do you mean the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx? Yes, I did read it. Or do you mean American Marxism by the incredible Mark Levin? I also did read that. That's sitting in here because you want to know how this sort of crypto Marxism ends up in your institutions and what that means in practice in your everyday life when these people are walking through our institutions and changing things while we're too busy working hard and paying the bills. There's also the Sage Handbook of Marxism, because I thought, is there something that I'm missing, the Marxist Handbook? The Sage Handbook on Marxism, I dug that one up on the internet, and I thought that one was kind of funny because it's a university level textbook, but it costs 400 British pounds to buy, which hardly seems Marxist to me, right? Don't they want everything to be free? Anyway, so yes, I have read it indeed. Wayne goes on to write, there is a tidal wave of criminal culpability for which countless politicians and bureaucrats are answerable to. They would simply not allow that to happen. I don't think they're ever going to be fully accountable. I just don't think so. With the remainder of his mandate, does anyone doubt that the Prime Minister would not solidify his power base? Again, he already has. And the way the ridings are laid out in Canada, it doesn't matter. We continue to vote in the West against Justin Trudeau, almost solidly blue. And it doesn't matter because the power base for the Liberals has been solidified, and it's been solidified for years. So they don't really need to do any sort of Marxist seizure of power. It's already been done through the distribution of ridings to Vancouver and to the GTA and Montreal. You don't need to seize control of this country in some sort of communist revolution. The suburban moms in the GTA are already doing that for Justin Trudeau. Once in power, dictatorship does not accede to the seemingly antiquated suffrage system. Even if Justin Trudeau steps down, his replacement would be just as tyrannical. Oh, I don't doubt that. Look at the talent bench of the Liberals. Who would, if Justin Trudeau just said, you know what, this isn't for me, I'm going to go back to surfing and smoking dope. Who would replace him? Chrystia Freeland. She cackled like some sort of goblin when she froze people's bank accounts for the crime of simply disagreeing with Justin Trudeau on vaccine mandates. She cackled. She devastated families and she thought it was funny. So yeah, would his replacement be just as tyrannical? I actually think she would be worse because Justin Trudeau is an idiot. She is slightly less idiotic. I don't think she's an intelligent woman, but she doesn't even pretend to give a damn. So I think that's quite sinister. Who in this country would protest the suspension of elections? I don't need to suspend elections. You know you're going to win. Any civil protest would not be met by Mr. Nice Guy next time. They weren't met with Mr. Nice Guy this time either in Ottawa. Can you disabuse me of this mindset? I'm not disabusing you of the mindset that Justin Trudeau is a tyrannical idiot or that his replacement would be probably worse. I'm just saying that the way the Canadian electoral system is broken down and the system in which we exist, he doesn't have to have some sort of dictatorial coup because of Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal's voting habits. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So I don't know what the solution is to fix that, but that's the system in which we live. And as an Albertan, I'm keenly aware of the unfairness of it all. Well, that's the show for tonight. Wayne, I hope that answered your question. There's not anything at Rebel News that is unmentionable on air. I can't speak for K2, but I don't think that Justin Trudeau will prorogue Parliament to indefinitely hang on to power. I just don't think he needs to. Anyways, that's the show for tonight. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see everybody back here in the same time, in the same place next week. And as always, don't let the government tell you that you've had too much to think.